The golden age of Hollywood, roughly the 1920s to early 1960s, was filled with glamorous stars, but not all of them stayed in the limelight. Some actors vanished mysteriously or stepped away from successful careers at their peak. Here's a list of notable examples who fit that mold. Greta Garbo was one of Hollywood's most enigmatic and iconic stars. Known for her haunting beauty and magnetic screen presence, she starred in classics like Camille, Grand Hotel, and Ninotchka. At the peak of her career, Garbo shocked the world by retiring in 1941 at just 36 years old after the critical failure of Two-Faced Woman. Unlike many stars who faded gradually, Garbo vanished from the spotlight almost overnight. Fiercely private, she never returned to acting and rarely gave interviews. She moved to New York City and lived a quiet, reclusive life until her death in 1990. Rumors swirled for decades. Some speculated she was disillusioned with fame, others believed she felt betrayed by Hollywood or simply preferred solitude. Whatever the reason, Garbo's withdrawal only fueled her mystique. Her legacy as the woman who wanted to be alone remains one of the most compelling disappearances in film history. To this day, Greta Garbo's abrupt exit remains a captivating Hollywood mystery. Deanna Durban was one of the most beloved stars of the 1930s and 1940s, known for her angelic singing voice and wholesome charm. She skyrocketed to fame as a teenager in Three Smart Girls, 1936, helping save Universal Studios from bankruptcy. Audiences adored her in hits like First Love and It Started With Eve, and she was once one of the highest-paid women in the United States, but at just 27 years old, at the height of her fame, Durban abruptly walked away from Hollywood in 1949. Frustrated by the limited roles and typecasting, she longed for a normal life away from the pressures of stardom. She married French director Charles-Henri David and moved to a small town near Paris, where she lived in near-total seclusion. Durban never returned to acting and granted only one interview decades later, still refusing to be photographed. Her disappearance stunned fans and cemented her legend. To this day, Deanna Durban remains a mysterious figure, an international star who turned her back on fame to live life on her own terms. Jean Tierney was one of the most stunning and talented actresses of Hollywood's golden age, best known for her roles in Laura, 1944, and Leave Her to Heaven, 1945, the latter earning her an Oscar nomination. Her ethereal looks and cool elegance captivated audiences, and she quickly rose to stardom, but behind the glamour was a life marked by deep personal pain. In the 1940s, Tierney gave birth to a daughter with severe disabilities, the result of a fan exposing her to rubella while she was pregnant. This, along with other personal struggles, took a toll on her mental health. By the early 1950s, Tierney began withdrawing from Hollywood, eventually seeking treatment for severe depression. Although she made a brief comeback in the early 1960s, she left acting for good by the end of the decade. She later remarried and lived quietly in Texas. Tierney's graceful disappearance was not surrounded by scandal, but by silence, a star who stepped out of the spotlight to seek peace. Her story remains a haunting blend of fame, fragility, and quiet resilience. Barbara Loden was a rare force in Hollywood, an actress, writer, and director who broke barriers with her deeply personal film Wanda, 1970. Known earlier for her performance in Splendor in the Grass and her marriage to director Elia Kazan, Loden stepped behind the camera to make Wanda, a raw, minimalist portrait of a drifting woman. The film won praise at Venice and became a landmark in feminist cinema. Despite the critical acclaim, Wanda would be her only feature film. Hollywood offered no support for her unconventional voice, and the male-dominated industry resisted giving her another chance. Loden quietly disappeared from the spotlight, focusing on theater and teaching. Compounding the silence was her battle with cancer, which took her life in 1980 at the age of 48. Her mysterious fade from public view, coupled with the singular power of Wanda, turned her into a cult figure posthumously. Rediscovered in recent decades, Barbara Loden is now celebrated as a visionary who walked away before the world fully caught up with her. Her vanishing remains as powerful as her presence. Philip Ahn was a pioneering figure in Hollywood, the first Korean-American film actor and one of the earliest Asian-American performers to gain steady work in mainstream cinema. Appearing in over 100 films and television shows, On was known for roles in Daughter of Shanghai, 1937, and China Sky, 1945, often cast in stereotypical Asian roles due to the limited opportunities of the era. Despite the typecasting, he brought dignity and depth to every performance. By the 1950s, On began shifting away from major film roles, turning toward television and later, community and cultural work. He opened a Korean restaurant in Los Angeles and became an advocate for Korean American causes. His transition from stardom was gradual, without scandal or explanation. He simply chose a different path. While not a dramatic vanishing act, On's fade from the limelight was notable for its quiet dignity. In a time when Asian representation was rare, he had blazed trails, then stepped aside. His legacy is not one of mystery but of purposeful retreat, Hollywood's forgotten pioneer who chose community over celebrity. John Gilbert was one of silent cinema's most romantic leading men, known for his smoldering performances in classics like Flesh and the Devil and The Big Parade. Often paired with Greta Garbo, he was MGM's top male star and beloved by audiences worldwide. But with the arrival of sound films, Gilbert's career took a sudden and tragic turn. Though rumors claimed his voice wasn't suited for talkies, his early sound performances proved otherwise. His voice was perfectly adequate. More likely, his decline was driven by studio politics. Gilbert clashed with MGM mogul Louis Mayer, and it's widely believed Mayer sabotaged his career out of personal animosity. Gilbert was given weak scripts and unflattering roles. Slowly eroding his box office appeal, by the early 1930s, Gilbert's star had faded. He made a brief, poignant comeback in Queen Christina, 1933, alongside Garbo, but it was too late. He died of a heart attack in 1936 at just 38 years old, his fall from grace forever steeped in mystery and regret. John Gilbert remains one of Hollywood's most haunting cautionary tales. Louise Rener made history as the first actor to win back-to-back Academy Awards, for The Great Ziegfeld, 1936, and The Good Earth, 1937. Her delicate beauty and emotional depth captivated audiences, and MGM touted her as their next great star. But just as quickly as she rose to fame, Rener disappeared from the spotlight. Disillusioned by the rigid Hollywood studio system, she resented being typecast and denied creative control. Her relationship with MGM soured, and she chose to walk away rather than be molded into a marketable image. By the early 1940s, Rener had left Hollywood behind entirely, relocating to Europe and turning her back on stardom. She appeared in only a handful of roles afterward. Mostly in theater or minor films, for decades, she lived quietly, far from the glitz that had once embraced her. Her retreat from fame was not due to scandal or decline, but a deliberate, almost defiant act of self-preservation. Louise Rener remains one of Hollywood's most fascinating mysteries, an Oscar-winning legend who vanished at her peak by choice, not circumstance. Dolores Hart was one of Hollywood's rising stars in the late 1950s and early 1960s. Known for her roles in Loving You, with Elvis Presley, and Where the Boys Are, she was a stunning presence on screen, and her career was rapidly taking off. By the time she was 24, she had already worked with some of the era's biggest names and earned rave reviews for her performances. However, in 1963, at the height of her fame, Dolores Hart shocked the world by leaving her promising career behind. She entered the Benedictine convent of Regina Laudis in Connecticut, choosing religious life over the glitz and glamour of Hollywood. Her decision baffled many in the industry, as she seemed to have it all: youth, beauty, and the potential for a long career ahead. Hart's retreat from the limelight was sudden and absolute, making her one of Hollywood's most mysterious disappearances. She has since found fulfillment in her religious vocation, occasionally returning to public life to reflect on her time in the industry. Her story remains one of the most unexpected and inspiring transitions from fame to faith. And Sheridan was one of Hollywood's most beloved actresses in the 1930s and 1940s, known for her roles in films like The Man Who Came to Dinner, 1942, and King's Row, 1942, where her striking beauty and sharp wit made her a standout in both comedies and dramas. She was dubbed the Oomph Girl for her sultry screen presence, and her career was at its peak during the 1940s. However, by the early 1950s, Sheridan began to pull back from Hollywood. After a series of less successful films and a struggle with health issues, she quietly faded from the big screen. She turned to television and theater, focusing on roles that allowed her to stay out of the public's eye. Despite her diminished presence, she maintained a steady, if quieter, career in the 1950s. Sadly, Sheridan passed away from cancer in 1967 at just 51 years old. Her early exit from Hollywood, combined with her relatively low-profile later years, leaves behind an air of mystery about why she disappeared when she did. Dorothy Dandridge was a trailblazer, becoming the first African-American woman to be nominated for the Academy Award for Best Actress for her role in Carmen Jones, 1954. Her beauty, talent, and poise captivated audiences, and she seemed poised for an illustrious career in Hollywood. However, despite her breakthrough, Dandridge's opportunities in Hollywood were severely limited. Hollywood's racial barriers and systemic discrimination meant that meaningful roles for black actresses were few and far between. After Carmen Jones, Dandridge struggled to find roles that would allow her to showcase her full range as an actress. She starred in a few films, but none matched the success or acclaim of her early work. Frustrated with the lack of opportunities, she faced personal and financial difficulties, including a series of failed marriages and battles with depression. Her life and career came to a mysterious and tragic end when she died in 1965 at the age of 42, found in her apartment from what was ruled an accidental overdose. However, speculation persists about the circumstances surrounding her death. Dorothy Dandridge remains one of Hollywood's most poignant figures, whose promise was unfulfilled, and whose life was as tragic as it was groundbreaking. Sure. Here are a few lesser-known stars from the Golden Age who mysteriously vanished. Jane Greer, star of Out of the Past, stepped away from Hollywood after her peak. Lana Turner, known for Peyton Place, withdrew after Scandal. Sally Blaine, popular in the 1930s, disappeared from acting early.